And happy podcasting day, everybody. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good day.
Welcome back indeed.
Always good to come back when your team scores 51 points and doesn't lose. So, always good.
Yeah, nice 50 burger. Can't be mad at that.
I'm a little upset they didn't let D. Eskridge or someone get that score at the 1 yard line. To put up like 57, 58 would have been just like extra, but it's not Pete style, you know.
Is that our first 50 burger since Cardinals in 2012?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Since that 3-game amazing stretch.
Yeah, it started with Buffalo. It was what's crazy about that Buffalo game, it was played in Toronto. And Earl had probably one of the most unassuming pick sixes ever because he just the ball got thrown in the middle of nowhere. He dove, grabbed it, no one touched him, and he just started walking. No one kept calling. No one blew a whistle, so he started turning to jog, and then he sprinted and he turned it into a touchdown. And I think that was Russ's first multiple running touchdown game of his career. Obviously, it was that year one, but yeah, we haven't seen a 50 burger in quite some time. It's just not Pete's game.
Felt pretty good. Would have been nice if we could have kept them from scoring as much as they did, but whatever. It's all good.
You know, the Amon Saint guy, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. I mean, I don't know what Blair was doing on a couple plays. He's on your fantasy team, Ross?
He's in my dynasty league. Even though after he started doing amazing, I still kept him on my taxi squad. But I've got him for next year. He's on stash.
Nice.
Took him in the third round of the rookie draft, just like everybody else was leftovers.
Did you know his brother's in the league too, Equanimous?
Yeah, he plays for the. They all have weird names, so
they're like old Egyptian names or something like that.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, Amon Ra, that's just amazing.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
wish I'd been named Amon Ra, or
it would totally change the podcast if that's what your name was. I mean, you know, we have Ross, Zeb, and Sam. It's very different. It would be Zeb, Sam, and Amon Ra.
It would be.
There's another brother named Osiris as well.
They must either be Egyptian or love Egyptian history.
Well, the funny part is the parents' names are John and Miriam.
Maybe they're just huge hieroglyphic nerds and just look, we gotta have kids, and we gotta name them something in hieroglyphics.
Name them something tight. That's all I know.
Yeah,
fantastic names all around that whole family except the parents.
Yeah, that's it's kind of weird that they can get away with very generic names, but you know, maybe that's what it is. You live vicariously through your kids. But enough about that. Let's get back to the Seahawks at hand. I did not expect that. I definitely was surprised at how well they came out. I mean, again, granted, it's very similar to the Jaguars game or the Houston game where Geno looked great against Houston. Russ looked great, or Geno looked great against, was it the Jaguars? And then Russ looked great against Houston, and now Russ looks great against the Lions. You know, 3 bottom teams, and Seattle happened not to be the bad team that day.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta
looking at it, but I wasn't that surprised just because I know we don't have a good record this year, but do we really buy that we're really that bad of a team? Are we that bad compared to last year, or is it a series of sort of unfortunate circumstances and timing and things like that happened? I don't buy that we're essentially in the level with even, you know, with these teams like the Jaguars and whatever, where we're bottom feeders this year by record, but we still have talent. We can still put games together.
We weren't 12-4 good last year, but that's where we ended up. And I don't think we're 6-10 bad this year, but here we are.
They say you are what your record is, and I mean, as far as reality goes, you are, but I mean, you're not going to the playoffs, you're not going to the playoffs, but I don't really buy that any Pete Carroll coach team is really ever, you know, a bottom feeding, you know, we're really just have almost no chance against the good teams kind of thing. Because even a couple of weeks ago when we lost to good teams, we weren't getting blown out.
Right. It's not like we haven't been competitive. We've been
Yeah.
in every game for the most part.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing that's always unique about a Pete Carroll team is that they're always going to play a close game. So for them to get a blowout, that's more of a rarity. You know, we talk about the standard Seahawks game where like it's a 7-10 first half and the Seahawks just like, you know, use all of their effort and just kind of not really dominate, but they just kind of like exert their will and say like, we're going to beat this smash mouth out of you and we're going to win by like, you know, 2 points. Nothing is ever comfortable, but this past game was really comfortable. It was almost like, wow, that's really sweet. We're just going to keep scoring.
Yeah.
And that's how I was so bummed. I was really bummed that D didn't get that touchdown. Like, he was so close. I wanted them to score, but, you know, that's not Pete's style. Like, he's not one to run up a score on anyone.
True.
What's your deal?
Yeah, really. What's your deal, Pete? Come on. You know, these guys need some stats. But
I was a little embarrassed for the fans who were booing that he didn't run up the score. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 6-10, like you need everything to. Yeah, but you kind of want everything. Like there is no good time when you're 6-10 to say like, you know what, we've scored enough points.
I can understand wanting to score. I'm not sure it's something that warrants a boo.
That's true, but I also think the fans that boo at a game, like if I went to 8 Seahawk home games this year and only saw them win 3 of them, I would be pretty rough. And it wasn't the best weather on Sunday. Again, not
plus
excuses,
people are drunk also.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's totally inexcusable. I probably wouldn't have been one to boo in that time, but I think it's definitely something that there's merit for why people booed, but I wouldn't be one of them.
Nah, it's not really my style. I guess.
Yeah, I'm not really a booer. I mean, I'll boo the enemy for sure, but I'm not booing my team.
I mean,
sure.
I definitely have booed the Seahawks when they've gone like 5 3-and-outs in a row, you know, at a home game.
I've booed the refs.
Oh, the refs always get booed. That's no question, really.
Yeah, I'm not really putting myself out there with that one.
Well, the Seahawks played their best game of the year in their final home game of the 2021 regular season. Sadly, this complete showing comes too little, too late in the season. That's really not going to add much, but it was nice to see the offense and defense play very functionally for 4 quarters. The Seahawks now find themselves in a position they haven't been in over a decade, and that's as a spoiler for other teams. They faced the division-leading Arizona Cardinals and couldn't impact playoff seedings of so many teams. This is a Hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. And, gentlemen, let's jump into some topics. So, Ross, I'm going to hit you up first. I want to know, what was the most impressive from the game? Russ playing a near-perfect game, DK catching 3 impressive touchdowns, Rashaad Penny winning NFC Offensive Player of the Week, or the Seahawks corners getting 3 interceptions, the first interceptions of the entire season from a cornerback?
Hard. I think it's Penny. I think Metcalf, we know that he can do that. Russ, you almost still expect that. Cornerbacks, it's all just sort of math, and you're playing against a not very good backup quarterback. So, I mean, Penny was just really a relief to see, because that's now 5 weeks in a row he started. 3 of the 5, he's gone over 100 yards. For a lot of this game, he was averaging over 10 yards a carry. Until they started just pounding straight into the line later on to bring the average down. But I thought Penny was the most impressive. I mean, it's funny because like that's 5 games he started now, which is more than Chris Carson this year. And it just seems like he's really actually building a sort of credible case to stick around next year, to be the starter maybe next year. And that's not something that a month and a half ago we would have taken seriously. A month and a half ago, you're just assuming he's not even on the roster next year. And now, literally, with 5 weeks, 3 really impressive weeks out of the 5, you're like, yeah, that guy, this is the guy we thought we were getting when we drafted him. Even when people didn't want to draft him, at least you thought you were getting this guy. So to me, that's the most, I mean, you can make a case for all of them, but for me, that was the most impressive.
Zeb, what about you? You look at this game. There are a lot of things that we didn't see throughout the year, but in this game, they definitely showed. Russ, DK, Penny, DJ Reed. Who was the most impressive? What was the most impressive of those 4?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with the cornerbacks getting the picks, only because to go an entire season without one of your cornerbacks getting an interception is, I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can't imagine that's happened very many times throughout the history of, or the modern history of the league. So
Shaquille Griffin could only play on one side, so
right. You know, like Ross said, Russ has played a lot of nearly perfect games in his career, and although he's been on this little downswing here recently, it's still not super surprising to see him be efficient, especially with, and we'll probably get into this later, but especially with a run game that was working as efficiently as ours was on Sunday. So DK, I think, you know, like Ross said, we know he can do this. This is what he's supposed to be able to do. For whatever reason, him and Russell haven't been able to put it together so much this year, and it was good to see it. But it felt really good to get those turnovers and get those interceptions by your cornerbacks. Where was it all year? Obviously, you can't play Tim Boyle every week, but we're also used
to the NFL about that.
Yeah, we're also used to seeing quarterbacks like Tim Boyle make us look bad for whatever reason. So for them to actually dominate a backup quarterback the way you expect Pete Carroll, coach of defense, to do was impressive.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Zeb, in that almost that you really kind of expect these things to happen. You know, to be fair, Tim Boyle did help score 29 points, so it's not like he got shut down. If I had to pick one, with Russ, you needed to see Russ have that type of a game. Penny, you could make a case that the Lions are a 2-win team. He needed to do that. The corners, like you said, Zep, like it's so unheard of to see an entire team go 0 in the interception column the entire year. They've had like 1 or 2 called back due to penalties, but still insane. I actually am going to go with DK, and the reason I want to go with DK is because there are so many questions about where he fits in as a wide receiver, as like, you know, his future with the Seahawks. Obviously, there's a poll on Hawkscast.net about extending DK. There's 4 options you can choose from. He gets signed this offseason because he's in the 3rd year of his 4-year contract. He gets signed before he hits free agency. He gets tagged with the franchise tag, or he gets traded away in some capacity. I voted that he gets extended in the offseason because this is the type of game that shows how dominant he could be. 2 of those touchdowns were just like great grabs. They weren't even like contested. They like normal contested balls. Like one of them, he literally like grabbed it in front of a guy and kind of like just like pulled it out of a hat. And that's what you expect, but we haven't seen that in so many weeks. We were talking about DK didn't have a touchdown from Halloween until the end of December, and then in 2022 he catches 3 touchdowns. So I was very impressed with DK. He's got 12 touchdowns for a year. I felt that we needed to see that, and the thing that caught me was leading up to this game, DK was somewhat questionable. He was probably in the probable category, but they don't have that designation anymore, so that he was kind of questionable because he hadn't been practicing. And then he said Pete started having them practice with helmets on, which is something that they don't normally do. And he thought, for whatever reason, people were going to get cut. I don't know if he thought he was on the chopping block, but he said, like, you know what, I'm injured, but I have to practice. Like, I can't be that guy that lets this team down. And to me, I thought that spoke really, really well, and it makes me a bigger fan of DK, and I'm more excited, especially if he gets extended this offseason. So to me, it was the game and his comments after the game. That's what to me was the most impressive.
Where did you read those? That's really interesting. I didn't catch those.
Yeah,
where did you read that?
I'll put it on the forum, and I'll put it in the Extend DK. But it was a comment. I can't remember if it was in the post game or if it was a beat reporter who reported later on. But it was about the style of practice, and it was on Thursday that Pete said that they were going to practice with helmets on. And, I assume because it's late in the season and, a lot of bodies are banged up, they don't really do a lot of full contact. They try and keep everyone a little bit fresher, but Pete found a way to motivate, and DK took that as a challenge, and I thought that was a really strong response from him, and, it showed in that game. Because there are a lot of people that were questioning, like, oh, is Russ upset with DK? Is DK upset with Russ? They don't seem to have this connection. Like, they're not playing as good as they have been. There are a lot of those questions that, fans have been asking. I don't know if Russ...
Definitely a narrative the media was running with as well. There was a lot of articles, and even the announcers were, like, trying to push that narrative during the game.
Yeah, and I personally never felt that, because there were times where DK was so excited for the other people on the team when they performed well, when they did their jobs. So I was never in that camp, but it was definitely like you said, Ross, there was a narrative that was getting pushed that, there's this this divide getting created between DK and everyone else. And,
I don't deny that DK gets frustrated, but I don't think he takes it personal, like with Russ. I don't think he takes it personal with even Shane, like with the play calls. I just think he personally gets frustrated. I mean, like, the nature of the position is pretty frustrating. And you play it for the Seattle Seahawks, where they tend to throw the ball around, to spread it around. I mean, normally a receiver is going to get like 4, 5, 6 catches in a game anyway out of 60 plays. That's, if you're a DK Metcalf, that can be frustrating. So he's going to have to learn to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's not like being a Penny where you get 25 carries in a game.
Seriously. I think the other thing that speaks really well about that game is there were a lot of things to say was really impressive. Obviously, letting your opponent score 29 points is never a great thing. But the game really never seemed to be in question. With that strong running game, credit to Rashaad Penny, they kind of allowed them to do whatever they want. So I think it's great that we had a lot of considerations, but I was very happy with that. Any thoughts before we move on to topic number 2?
I don't want to take away from Russ's game. I mean, like, we spent all season saying what's wrong. So I don't want to turn around and make it seem like I don't want to give a credit where credit's due. It's just the fact that you're still kind of hoping that is who Russ is. And so you want to not be surprised by it. You want to think that he can still do that. And it just hasn't happened this year because football's a weird existence and weird world. So I don't want to sound like I'm being like a jerk to Russ.
I think that's fair to say, and
it was good to see him have like designed runs even.
Yeah, and I definitely want to say that he played in a manner in which I feel is his best attribute, and that is making plays, off play action, playing with the strong running game. I think that's really what, sets Russ apart when he's kind of able to play that. I put this on Hawkscast where it was 21-21 rush attempts to pass attempts, and they were up 38-15 in the third quarter. Time of possession, about 15 minutes to 20 minutes. Like, those are things that the Seahawks, when they're playing in a balanced way, should be able to do. And I thought that was, credit to Russ, because he's the one in the huddle calling the plays. He's the one that's executing. So, he did what I think a lot of people have been wanting to see all year long. So I think it is definitely something to give Russ credit for.
And the last thing I want to say about it is when we're talking about what is impressive, I hope the game was impressive in the literal sense to Russ. I hope he comes away from the game thinking about the stats you just mentioned, thinking that, like, I know that he wants to be the best of all time, but that implies being a more traditional quarterback. But I hope this game really emphasizes and kind of reminds him that what he does really special, what he does better than any other quarterback ever, maybe, is improvise, is the play action, is that sort of like be the ultra efficient off of a run based attack, because everybody's always saying things like, oh, well, then any quarterback can do the job. No, you can't. That's why you need the super efficient quarterback so that when you have your 25 passing attempts, they do the max damage. And that's actually the ideal system for him, in my opinion. So I just hope that he learned or gave him food for thought in this game. I hope it was impressive for him.
Agreed, 100%. And here's just a little stat taste for everyone out there. Russ, 20 for 29, 236 yards, 4 touchdowns. This was the rushing game. Rashaad Penny, 25 rushes, 107 yards, 6.8 average, 2 touchdowns. D. Eskridge, 1 rush, 30 yards. Travis Homer, 6 rush, 27 yards. Russ, 6 rushing attempts, 24 yards, 4 yards a carry. And then DK, Tyler, and DJ all had a run attempt. You know, they did okay, but that is a lot of running, you know, and you have to add the fact that it was a bad defense, but they took advantage, and I think it made their game just look so much stronger. All right, let's move on to topic number 2. And Zeb, I want to know, did anything that happened in this week change the trajectory for the offseason? You know, there's still a lot of question marks heading into this offseason, heading into what this team is going to look like, but did this game change what we are going to see in the offseason?
I don't imagine that that a win like this over a 2-win team when we're already out of the playoffs is going to be the kumbaya moment that we probably all kind of hoped that it would be. It was fun. It was obviously the guys were having fun, and you know, there's a lot to speculate about what relationships are like behind the scenes and what the ultimate future plans are of this team. But I think, if anything, it's going back to exactly what you guys were just talking about. If this game could be a reminder to Russell what it takes for him to be as successful as he can be, and how much this type of game is how the team is successful. I don't know that Russ. I'm not in his head. There's been a lot of speculation about him wanting stats and accolades, and you know, off the field grandeur and all this stuff. But if he can look at, like you guys were just talking about, if he can look at this game and say, you know what, this is how we can be successful as a team, and this is the way we're going to win games and ultimately compete for championships, then maybe there's a chance that this could change the potential trajectory of what's going to happen this offseason. I'm not counting on it, but that would be my one hope.
Ross, what about you? Did you see anything in this game that changes the trajectory for the offseason?
I mean, as a whole, Zeb's made a lot of good points there. I don't know if one game against the team with the second worst record in the league,
yeah, by half game, the second worst record,
opens up a bunch of eyes and just says, oh, well, okay, I guess the ship's been righted. This is the wave of the future. It doesn't do that necessarily. But individually, looking at individual things, I think, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think that this game potentially solidifies in John Schneider's mind and Pete Carroll's mind that maybe Penny's worth keeping. And that, he's not going to demand a huge contract, obviously. He still is what his record is what it is. So, excuse me. So individually, I still think that it can, for individuals. I think it continued to build a case for some of the offensive line, coming back. Now, does it change the trajectory of what happens with Russell Wilson? I don't know, because kind of like what we talked a lot about last week, I don't know what was up, and I don't know what is up, and I don't know what they're thinking. Pete Carroll rather loudly said this week, just went right after the rumors and said, "That's not what Russ says to me. That's not what Russ says to me." So you guys are spending all this time. Ross is obsessing every day, and he shouldn't be. Ross is out here advocating for a special 3-part series of podcasts just to discuss Russell Wilson's future. And Pete Carroll's like, yeah, nah. Russ is the Seahawk. He's signed for a couple more years, and as far as I know, he's coming back, and I don't know why he wouldn't want to come back. John Clayton freaked out this week. Mike Salk on 7:10 a.m. wanted to talk about, hey, was that Russell's last home game? And, like, Clayton, like, freaked out and essentially left the air. Like, he's like, that's just ridiculous. Why would he do that? Well, because he wants to... The one thing I will say to contradict, if we're going to stir the pot a little bit, like Zeb's kind of mentioned, it's a bit of speculation that Russ wants the accolades and this and that. I think he's come pretty close to saying pretty directly, you don't have to parse that much speech to see that Russell Wilson doesn't just want to be efficient. He doesn't want to be the most efficient. He wants gaudy numbers, I think. He wants the pay. I mean, I don't know how badly or how flexible he is, but it sure does sound like when you listen to him talk that he does want the MVP votes. He's actually went after them last year. There was a campaign last year. He wants, and to get the MVP votes, you have to have the yards and you have to have the TDs. And he might be, he might be lying to himself or kidding himself or like couching in terms to make himself sound like a better person, saying basically he just doesn't believe like a running system can win. So that's why he wants it. But to me, it really, really sounds pretty obviously that he wants numbers. He doesn't want to just win. He doesn't want to just win.
I want to play it just a little devil's advocate on that point. And it's not something that I fully believe in, but I feel it's something that we should address. Whenever we think about our Super Bowl runs in 2013 and 2014, Russ is like the third, fourth person that everyone talks about. Everyone talks about Marshawn. Everyone talks about members of the Legion of Boom. People talk about Pete Carroll. They don't talk about Russ, and Russ is efficient. You know, that was a huge component in those 2 seasons where they went to the Super Bowl winning one. Is Russ's efficiency is just off the charts, but it wasn't those gaudy numbers. And if you are the type of person that has the mindset that Russell Wilson has, maybe that starts to eat at you and says, you know what? Everyone says the only reason why I'm good is because of Marshawn and the Legion of Boom. Well, both of those guys are gone. Like the Legion of Boom, they're all off on different teams. 2 of them are retired, and Marshawn's retired, and I'm still here. And people still want to talk about the Legion of Boom, and they want to talk about the running game, but I'm still here. I'm putting up numbers. Why isn't anyone talking about me? I wonder if there's that small sense that that's what he's trying to overcome, not because he thinks that, but because he has to prove that to the narrative out there.
I mean, that might be true, but here's the thing that I always thought Russell Wilson, early when he was younger and when he was a different kind of person, or seemed to be, what I always wanted him to be aware of was, yeah, they say all those things, and yes, those people are all gone now, and here you're still standing, but here's the thing. We haven't won a Super Bowl since they've been gone. We haven't gone to the Super Bowl since they've been gone. So you can get mad and you can say, now I really, really need to prove that I could do it on my own, that it was me, not just Marshawn, not just Richard Sherman, not just the Legion of Boom. Or you can say, wow, it's a team game. When there's a strong defense and a good running game and I am being hyper efficient and just dropping dimes 60 yards down the field off of play action, man, we are unstoppable. Or you can say, it's about me and I got to prove I can do it. Now, did you say go Hawks all those years and not really mean it and you meant go Russ? Or did you mean go Hawks? Because you're not Hawks. You're Russ. If you mean go Hawks and you want the Seahawks to do well, it's a team game. There's 53 people on the roster, plus 1 billion people in the training camp and a taxi squad now. And it takes every single one of those. Because if the left guard doesn't do his job every single play, then you don't do that. If Metcalf doesn't get open, you don't do it. Like, the passing game needs everybody to do their job right.
I think that's fair.
So,
I think that's a really
aside.
good counter to the devil's advocate. I do want to low key say that if Russ did end a interview or anything, and he said instead of "Go Hawks," he said "Go Russ," I would kind of low key love all the people's heads explode. That would be great. I do want to move ahead, but final thoughts about the trajectory for the offseason. For me, just really quickly, because I want to get my little side in here, is that I don't think it changed like the overall narrative of Russ, John, Pete. Like those trajectories, those are really much in ownership's control. Jody Allen, whether she wants to be super involved or not, or continue to do what Paul did and trust the people to make football decisions, that's the trajectory. And it sounds like this one season is not going to derail everything, much to maybe the pain of a lot of people. The trajectory I think we saw is kind of like the individual things. You mentioned this with Rashaad Penny, Ross, where he might have found himself like a second life that we didn't know he was going to find. Like there's talk about Pete Carroll offering Adrian Peterson a coaching gig because he said he's been such a strong influence on the running backs. There's a lot of people that question the validity of that, but Pete said this week, I think it was today, that he thinks that Adrian Peterson did such a great job, even though he's only played one game for the Seahawks, but he feels that he's maybe as valuable as a player coach maybe. So there's a lot of individual things. I think DJ Reed has continued to show his value to the team. That was a game that really stamped, in my opinion, that this is a guy that need to figure out how to re-sign. The right tackle, Curran, I forget his first name, he seems like he's made Brandon Shaw completely expendable. Dwayne Brown, I'm kind of sneaking. It's like, man, maybe we bring you back as like a sixth tackle or sixth offensive lineman, like emergency left tackle if Stone Forsythe really doesn't pan out, or you get to compete with him for that starting left tackle job, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. I think there's a lot of individual narratives and positions that people are going to be able to fight for. I think Jordan Brooks is another person who's really helped himself and come on really strong. I think his coverage still needs to improve, but he's making play after play after play, and I feel like these last several weeks him and Bobby, they've just been on fire. The difference is Jordan's doing it at the line of scrimmage, whereas Bobby, because of his age, we're seeing it a little bit behind the line of scrimmage, which is where we don't want it to be. So I think both of you are correct that the larger trajectory is not really changed in this game and won't be impacted by the next game, but the individuals and their Seahawk trajectory has definitely been impacted greatly by how they're finishing this year.
Yep.
And with that, Zeb, or Ross, topic number 3. This is the Hawkscast Corner. There's a couple topics about extending players and players' last years, but Ross, did we see some Seahawk players play their final game in front of the home fans? So 17-game season, we're in week 18. Last game is on the road, but this was the last home game where they finished 3-5. Are there some players that played their final games in front of our fans?
Yeah. A whole bunch, probably. I mean, we have a whole bunch of free agents coming up.
A bunch of free agents.
I don't have the list in front of me, but I mean...
Three-fifths of the offensive line. 2 out of our 4 starting DBs. 1 corner, 1 safety. Our linebackers all coming back.
I don't think we're going to lose as many stars as we think, or stars on a 6-10 team.
Stars with an asterisk.
I mean, I think they find a way to bring Diggs back, and I think they really screw that up. They cost themselves a lot of money by not getting him done sooner, and I think they'll learn that lesson, and that's why they'll sign DK, by the way, before his contract's up. But like even Bobby Wagner, who I've been saying for 2 years now, like trade him, and get rid of him, get that contract off the books. I don't think, as I've thought about it for the past week, and I don't know where he goes on the roster, but I now feel that he'll be given an opportunity. I mean, I think they're going to release him, but he feels like he's in that category of people who get released and are allowed to look elsewhere. And when they find out they're not worth as much, they come back. And maybe take even like $1 million less to stay as a Seahawk. But then it becomes awkward because I don't want him to be the starter. I want Brooks to move to the middle and take that over because I want him to develop that. But Bobby Wagner's meant so much to the team, and the Seahawks are a bit sentimental when it comes to contracts sometimes. I feel like he'll be given the opportunity to come back on a reduced contract. I don't think they'll ask him to restructure first. I think they'll literally cut him and then let him go, sort of do the walk around the NFL and find out. I mean, maybe a team doesn't want to overplay him and he does play somewhere else next year, but I feel like he's one of those re-signs and then plays somewhere for us. Dwayne Brown is maybe the big name that he could be gone. But I think there's a lot of players probably, but it's mostly the second or third tier people who won't be back. Most of the first tier, I've actually changed my position. I mean, I like even on Russell Wilson as I really, really thought about things more realistically this week. I don't think Russell Wilson will want to cause the PR damage to himself by literally demanding a trade. So I now think that he'll be back. Like I said, Bobby, I think he just feels like one of those guys, right? They don't do it a lot, but there's been a handful of guys, they said, you're released, but we want you to come back under a more reasonable term given what you are now. We're not going to pay you for what you were in 2014. So I think, we're going to lose a bunch of people. Bye-bye. But maybe Dwayne Brown is the biggest one because he's not what he is, and he was on the edge of holding out for more money this year. How badly do some of these players not identify their own talent level at present?
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
Zeb, what about you? Are there some players on this roster, maybe even players that fans really, really love? Did they play their last game in front of the home crowd?
Definitely.
Who's gone?
Definitely. I
names.
think. Oh yeah, I got a whole list. I'm going to go down here. I really do. Dwayne Brown's gone. Bobby Wagner's gone. Brandon Shell is gone. Gerald Everett is gone.
You think what's his? Did he sign a 1 year?
1 year deal.
Yep. He's up.
Oh wow. Okay.
Al Woods is gone.
Yeah.
Who?
Al Woods.
Oh.
Al Collins is gone, and then I think probably the biggest surprise of all, Gavin Heslop is gone.
I just got his jersey.
Well, that happens. Hurt. Yeah, he sure did.
He's on a 1 year deal.
Yeah. And then,
you don't think there's a chance they bring Bobby back under less?
Well, yeah, of course there's a chance. I'm just guessing that he won't. And
somewhere else?
And I think we're going to trade Russell.
You think we're going to trade Russell?
I'm sticking with it.
I won't be surprised. It's just the more I thought about it this week, I just thought John Schneider and Pete Carroll have gotten a bit more conservative in the past couple of years with that kind of stuff, and I just don't see them thinking they're going to go get another quarterback right now. And with Pete Carroll's 108 years old, and so I don't know if he wants to go through the process again. And
yeah, I mean, I totally agree. But my prediction, for what it's worth, is that they pull the trigger and make it happen.
Did Russ hurt his value this year?
Yes, a little bit. Not tremendously, but definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Zeb. The idea that Russ is no longer valuable, like there is Chris Sims on NBC Sports was saying that if the Jets were given the chance to trade Russell Wilson straight up for Zach Wilson, they might say no. And that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
That's dumb.
Well, Chris Sims is an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things I think I don't disagree with him, but there's definitely a lot of comments about the Seahawks. He maybe is just not a Pete fan, Maybe he feels like he got snubbed when he went to Texas and didn't get recruited to USC or something, but he definitely has something for this against the Seahawks. I don't think that means that he's like unable to be objective, but he definitely says some really, really, really poor things. But yeah, I just to kind of wrap that up, I don't think Russ's value is tanked as bad as people think it is.
I agree.
He's only thrown 4 interceptions on the year, and there's GMs that are going to look at that and say, like, well, my guy threw 24, and Russ only threw 4, and he was injured. Man, I gotta do something and get this guy.
There's a couple of GMs licking their chops trying to figure out what they got to do.
To give you an idea of how bad some GMs are, Bill O'Brien gave away Dwayne Brown to us for a second-round pick. He gave Seattle Jadeveon Clowney for a third-round pick and paid for half of his salary. There are some really bad GMs out there.
Yeah, for sure.
To kind of wrap up this topic, yeah, it kind of sucks, and the writing is on the wall that there are definitely a lot of players that are on the final year of their contract that we are going to see on another team next year. I think Gerald Everett is another person that you didn't do enough, and I don't know if they can't get a friendly contract, they're not going to force their way and re-sign him. I think Will Dissly is a free agent. 3/5 of their offensive line: Dwayne Brown, Ethan Posick, Brandon Shell. Brandon Shell now looks replaceable. They still need to figure out what they're going to do at center. Dwayne Brown, I'm kind of iffy with. I'm hot and cold. I think this last game was great, but overall he wasn't great this season. In the secondary, I need them to bring back DJ Reed. I want them to bring back Quandre, but like Ross said, they might have made a mistake and made it so that he's too expensive now. He had a great year defensively, and he led the team in picks, and he has one of the highest pick numbers for a safety in the league, because safeties don't get picks anymore because quarterbacks are better at throwing across the middle. There's a bunch of the lunch pail guys that we're gonna lose. Al Woods is one of those guys. He's a guy. He does what we need. And we might bring him back in a year and a half from now, but I think the biggest question mark is going to be Bobby. And Bobby has said that he doesn't feel like he played his last game in front of the Seahawks fans, which I think is very encouraging, especially since most of the time players that are injured for the year, they're not always going to be available to talk to the press or the media. So the fact that Bobby did, I think it speaks to how he views himself and his relationship with Pete. And this is where I think Seahawks fans will have a hard time with Pete's philosophy, which is he will not get rid of people if he still sees their value, even if they're a little bit overpaid. Because he's done that with other players on the team, and Bobby will definitely be a true test of that.
Bobby's not a little overpaid, though. He's a lot overpaid.
I think from pure football perspective, I would agree with that, but I also believe that Bobby brings so many tangibles, which is what we talk about with Pete all the time. It's not just about the play calling. It's not just about the team structure. It's not just about the drafting. It's not about trades and free agency. It's about the culture that Pete creates and this team-wide view that he gets people to buy into. And I think Bobby is a great benefactor of that because they've just
almost on the opposite side of that, because I know that he is a team leader by virtue of experience and whatnot. And that after the LOB kind of left, he kind of reluctantly had to step up. But I still don't think that he's a great person to lead by example, but he's not out there giving speeches. He's not out there. I don't know. I don't know if he has. Even that leading by example is a huge thing. Of course it is. But he's not like a vocal leader of the team, even now.
Right.
That's
a huge difference between the LOB. Almost all of them except for Cam were super vocal. But Cam was very similar into a Bobby, where he was lead by example, speak very softly, but when you do speak, it carries a lot of weight.
I mean, Cam almost became more vocal once he was no longer playing, I feel like.
True.
Bobby's a very, 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 very understated, quiet guy, and I think that sort of almost limits like some of his value that you would say, well, he maybe he's lost a step, but he works so well with the young guys and whatnot. I mean, does he? I mean, like, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying, like, I don't think he's really super strongly out there, like almost like a player coach kind of person, because I don't think it's really who he is.
I guess I have a slightly different experience with that or belief of that, because I see Bobby speak to the media, and I think that's one example of how he is vocal, because he is the face of that defense, not just because he's one of the highest paid players, but because he's constantly the voice for the defense, talking about their struggles, talking about how they're going to correct things. And maybe that's due to the fact that
I don't want to pay a dude $10 million extra because of that, though.
And I think that's fair, and that leads to what I think a lot of people were speculating, especially in the media, that you were mentioning that they cut Bobby, save all the dead cap, and he has a $20 million cap next year, but if they cut him, his dead cap is only like $3.5 million. So they have $16.5 million that they'd be able to play with just to cut him.
And that's a lot, dude.
That's like 5 players you could get, like, that are depth guys that could potentially be starters for sure.
I mean, that's almost the entire value per year of like a DK extension.
Yeah, that's true. Now, to that point, a lot of people in the media have been saying and taking with what Bobby has said, and said that there is a lot of space for Bobby to come back on a restructure, or like you said, Ross, he gets cut and then he re-signs with the team on a much more cap-friendly deal. If there was a team to do that, I would definitely bet on the Seahawks to accomplish that, more so than a lot of other teams. So I think there is that window, but it is going to be sad when some of these guys don't suit up. Like, not seeing 54 on the field it was definitely weird, because Bobby's missed some games here and there, but for the most part, he's been one of the more constant players on the Seahawks outside of Russell Wilson.
Here's the thing: Cody Barton ended up with about he got the same tackle numbers, man. Like
he had one good tackle downfield, but I've also seen a lot more bad Cody Barton play, and maybe it's just the big difference between playing middle linebacker and playing outside linebacker. I'm more excited about Jordan Brooks being the middle linebacker than Cody Barton for sure.
Well, of course, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of like the stats you get, it's just like that's the nature of the position in Pete Carroll's defense.
Right. The middle linebacker gets a lot of tackles for sure, just due to the position and how a lot of offenses operate.
Cody Barton had 7 tackles last game.
It's not bad. 7 tackles is good.
That's including assists and tackles. Jordan Brooks had 10. Like, assisted, like, non-assisted, like, Cody Barton was tied for second with 5.
Yeah, that's good.
Reed had 7, Brooks had 5, Barton had 5.
Yeah.
So Barton basically came in and essentially did almost the same job. This doesn't fit in this topic, but real quick, what happened to Poona Ford? I was told that Poona Ford was going to be a star this year.
Poona Ford needs not to get double teamed. That's what it is.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, there's the stars that get double teamed, and they're still stars.
Well, I don't know that he's ever going to be like a top 3 pass rusher or anything, but he's, takes up space and takes on those blockers.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to hear his name a lot more this year.
We should, because it's Poona, and that's a name that deserves to be heard as often as possible.
True.
I think that's a fair call out, but I think also the way that defensive line, it just needs to be rebuilt so desperately, because you can't have Poona being the guy that gets all of your attention, because there's not a threat anywhere else on that line. Carlos Dunlap came on strong. Joe Taylor's had a nice year. Rasheem Green's had a decent year, but those are all like effort sacks. They're not shooting out of a cannon and giving teams like zero chance because they're taking like two people on at the same time. So
I feel like Taylor had a few sacks like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Not a
it's just
lot.
not that consistent, right? That's what it is. Like, it's great you can get a guy that gets like 6 to 7 sacks on the year. I mean, Carlos Dunlap has 6 sacks on the year, and he's barely played until they decided that he's going to just play end like exclusively. So
Where he shines.
yeah, imagine that. All right, well let's move on to the final topic of the evening, and that is topic number 4. Who gets this? Is it Zeb? I lost
Yeah,
track.
it's my turn
All right.
to not know what I'm talking about.
All right, sounds good. Perfect. Just like me. What are we talking? Topic number 4. Is there any benefit to quote unquote losing this game for better draft position? We are facing the Arizona Cardinals, and because we don't have a lot to play for, we're not really going to talk about the Cardinals today, but we are going to talk about Zeb. Do we tank for a better draft position? Right now, the Seahawks, even though they don't have a first-round pick, all their picks would be a top 7 pick in the round if the standings stay correct, because we are tied with the Chicago Bears, and they beat us head-to-head, so we would have a better draft pick. If the Seahawks win and a bunch of other teams win based on tiebreakers, we could go as high as like the mid-teens for each pick in the round. Do we want to tank?
No. Absolutely not. If we had a first round pick, I could see the argument, but we don't. We got what we got, and it's the same as every year. We're gonna hit a couple maybe and probably miss on more. So I would rather. I want to beat the Cardinals, right? Like that's to me that's going into this weekend. That's what I want to see more than anything is us play a good game and beat a division rival. I've never subscribed to the idea of tanking for picks. I think it's silly. There's plenty of good football players out there that you can get in the draft. You just got to know what you're looking for, and how to identify it. So yeah, don't do that. Win the game. Let's create some memories.
Fair enough. Ross, what about you?
2021 Seahawks creating memories. I mean, yeah, it's almost comical to talk about it. Pete Carroll and John Schneider are not going to tank. I mean, I feel like Jody Allen could walk into their office and tell them directly, point blank, like, you're tanking. You're starting Geno Smith. I want to see Swain and whoever else at wide receiver. Tell the media we're evaluating for the future, our young guys, but like let's tank it. And I feel like what would happen is Sunday the Seahawks would still go out and play their best game, and Pete Carroll and John Schneider would like resign.
Yeah.
You couldn't get. It's not in their blood. It is tempting in a way because we still have our second and third and fourth. We have 2 fourth rounders. We have a second. We have a third, 2 fourths, a fifth, and a 7th rounder. So we're missing our first round, which is what everybody focuses on. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about your draft, stay position, not just in the first round, like all these other rounds. But yeah, come on. It doesn't. I mean, it never happens anyway that the players drafted in order ends up being like that's actually how good they were. You just gotta, like Zeb said, evaluate, pick a guy, get the best talent that fits your team, and it's gonna be there. So, you don't know how that's gonna shake it anyway. It's all theoretical. You want to keep your culture. You want to keep winning. You want to keep, you want to. I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. You still, as much as possible, want to stick with that narrative that, hey, if we hadn't been missing our starting quarterback, or if that fumble in that one game had just been recovered by us, if we hadn't missed that field goal, if we hadn't all kind of just had if next year everybody just is like a little bit better, think of what this year would have been like as well. You want to keep that narrative that basically you are a good team, that you're a winning team, that you were just that close. Things didn't bounce your way this year, and as an adult, you have to deal with that. But let's keep it going. And let's come back next year strong. those of you that are coming back. So I just don't think it's in their blood. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. You know, even like the sucking for lucking kind of stuff, which I don't think actually was a real thing. I don't think that was real. I don't think a lot of teams. I mean, that's not true. I don't think many teams tank. Some do. I mean, you can see, like I said, some teams go out there and start, quote unquote, evaluating their young guys or whatever, or shutting down. You know, oh, we don't want him to get further injured and whatever. Blah blah blah. Yeah, you're just. So some teams semi-tank. I mean, the team presidents do. Coaches never do. Players never do, because that's not a good way to get a job next year. I don't know how much tanking is a real thing. Felt, to be honest, outside of a few GMs.
Yeah, I think it's more evident that tanking is not a real thing in the NFL as opposed to other sports like hockey or the NBA, where they've actually had to institute a lottery system to ensure that teams don't automatically get like seeded right away. Now, there is some theories out there that, you know, even every team can get either the first round pick or like slotted between like their projected pick based upon the record. But in the NFL, it's so, it's just not valuable to be terrible to get a number one pick, because it's so hard to still be good if you're picking that high in the draft constantly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for the Seahawks, there's almost no benefit to tanking or losing this game or like going out there and trying not to play the best game possible. Doesn't mean that they're going to win, but they're not going to put like all their scrubs in there and treat it like the last preseason game of the year. For other teams, yeah, there is definitely value to tanking because it's really all you have. You don't have anyone on your roster that is worthwhile, or they're maybe fighting injury and they're signed for a big contract next year and you don't want them hurt for even longer, so you're going to sit your quote-unquote star. But even to that point, those players, for the most part, most of them will want to play. It's pretty rare now that we see players pulling themselves out of a game or out unexpectedly, unless you're like Antonio Brown. But that is a whole saga in and of itself. So
sadly, I'm actually starting to believe Antonio Brown, but it's not sad because I hate Bruce Arians.
Oh yeah, Bruce Arians is the Kangol douche. So there's not a surprise. He went out and said, "Oh yeah, Antonio Brown's been cut, but he hasn't officially been cut. So you're just like holding him hostage as an inactive, so no other teams can sign him. What are you doing?"
I mean, he also said that if he ever screwed up again, he'd be gone. But then, like, the dude faked his Vax card, and you didn't do anything.
Right.
Talking about credibility, I mean, holy crap! I mean,
yeah,
what a douche! What a douche!
Yeah. But yeah, those are our topics for the evening. Final thoughts before we move on to our prediction for the last one.
This has been despite the losses, this has been a fairly fun season, I think. There's some interesting experiments in there and some unknowns, and we got to see what this team looked like without Russell, and it wasn't great. But, despite my prediction that Russell's gone and my disappointment in the downturn of his recent seasons, I still hope they can work it out. I still want to win 5 Super Bowls with Russell. That's really what I want. So,
well, that's one more than he wants. So,
yeah, I'm shooting for the stars, swinging for the fences.
Zeb wants it more than Russ. That's how much
Obviously.
Zeb wants it.
Yep. You're not Hawks, by the way, with Ross you said earlier.
It's funny. This year's been a bit of a it kind of, like Zeb said, it's been fun in a way. Like, there's more in a sense to talk about when your team's not doing well, because you really get to discuss what you think you'd do to fix it, or everybody's got their own opinion of what's wrong, or who's really to blame or who's really sucking it up. And
it's also the aspect of saying, like, okay, we know the Seahawks are going to play a close game, but if they continue win a close game, as much as that's frustrating to watch as a fan, it's just kind of what they do. Now they're like losing in very different ways, where they're a 6-10 team. There's a lot more things to talk about. There's a lot more opportunity to say, like, well, there's like 7 different ways we can look at this one thing, and here's 3 of them. What are your 4? Like, that's a lot easier to come up with, as opposed to like, well, they just keep winning, even though we don't think they should.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
It has definitely been interesting. I mean,
It's also interesting, like position group. Sorry to catch up. Like going into the season, I actually felt really good about their defensive lines signings and whatnot. And
I'm disappointed in Kerry Harder, man. I mean, that guy, just you're not getting anything consistent from that guy at all, which is a huge bummer.
A lot of guys, like, I thought that was good to actually produce, and they didn't. But on the other side, cornerback, which we were all really afraid of, and with justifiably at the beginning of the season. But I would say that the cornerback position is pretty. I mean, it's not spectacular, but it feels pretty solid right now.
It's not bad. Did we have Trey Flowers at the beginning of this season?
Yeah, Trey Flowers for like 4 games, and then he got cut.
That's crazy. He feels like he was years ago to me.
Right.
But between the rookie who's hurt right now,
Brown.
and like Sidney Jones and
Sidney Jones, the only unvaccinated player on the squad.
Whack whack.
Big pressure.
And the new Reed, the other Reed, who's just finally getting in.
Reed. I think actually Amadi's come around in coverage. I was surprised. Like,
I'm so...
He's not amazing, but he's solidified himself.
I'm just so not impressed with Amadi or Blair. Even Ryan Neal has kind of...
I was getting to Blair. What do you do with Blair now? Because is Blair now a bust?
Yeah, 2nd-round pick, and you can't crack the starting lineup. Yeah, you're a bust.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you can't crack the starting lineup, but you're a safety on a team that's got Diggs and Jamal Adams.
Yeah, but we didn't always have Diggs. We didn't always have Jamal Adams.
Well,
you were behind Delano Hill, man.
Shout out to Delano.
I don't know. Because it feels to me like when he plays, Blair does do good stuff. He's got to find a way to do something. And by the way, Ryan Neal does have more sacks than Jamal Adams, so do with that what you will.
Jamal Adams has more interceptions than all but one of our corners.
Yeah, I'm just saying, man. Like, Ryan Neal, starting many fewer games and many fewer opportunities to blitz, has a sack, and Jamal Adams never got one this year.
Are you undoing the Jamal Adams trade right now? If you could,
dude, don't even. Give me my picks back.
So many, so heavily undoing that trade, and that's not even really a knock on him. I mean, he's what he is, but like, Jesus, what we gave up for what we got. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, he's not. Yeah. Okay, let's do our predictions.
All right. So just to recap. Last week, Ross predicted a 17-13 Lions win. Zeb predicted...
How did I do?
Not so great. I mean, your combined prediction, your over-under of total points was barely 1 point over what the Lions scored. Zeb predicted a 38-17 game, which is much closer.
But I think it actually was 38-17 at one point.
It was that at one point. I predicted a 21-20 Seahawks win. But I want to give a shout out to Austin, Seahawks 25. He predicted a 31-17, which is it wasn't as high of a score as Zeb was, but what he did is he did say that they put together a good game offensively, and Penny continues his dominance. Russell also has a fantastic game, adding fuel to the debate. So,
yeah, he nailed it.
His additional predictions were very spot on. So credit to Seahawks 25 on the forum. So, gentlemen, our predictions for the evening. What is the final score? Seahawks at Arizona.
Seahawks 33, Cardinals 24.
Ooh.
Cardinals won last week, right? But they've been not playing
They
awesome.
won 25-22 in Dallas. And Arizona is a 6.5 point favorite right now going into the game.
I really want to win this game just to like have the narrative on our side. I think they can do it. 31-28. Seahawks.
I would love a shootout. I don't even care who wins, but if both teams scored like 28 points each or 30 points each, that would be great. So I'm gonna shoot for a high scoring affair. I'm gonna say it's a tie because I don't really care who wins this game. We're gonna go 35-35. Yeah, 35-35. I want to see classic Russ, Kyler Murray just balling out. That's what I want to see.
Just 10 touchdowns, split even.
Yeah, I want DK to get a monster touchdown. I want Budda Baker to get like a long return somehow. I don't care how it comes around. I want there just to be a lot of points.
Why are you rooting for Budda Baker?
God damn you!
I like Budda Baker. I think he's a cool guy. I can like other people's on the team if I don't like his team.
Yeah, but you're asking for other players on other teams to score against us. That's a step too far.
Actually, real quick, I want to say, were any of you rooting for DK to take that field goal attempt back like I was?
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely!
Oh my god, I was like,
yes.
The fact that he took it back to the line of scrimmage, I thought was pretty impressive.
Man, if he had been able to take that to the house, we would be watching that highlight forever.
Yeah, it would just continue to further cement DK's legendary status in his early career. So
I went back twice this year and watched his interception rundown.
Ooh, that was really the play of the year. You know,
that was so impressive.
So the best thing about that play is Budda Baker is so embarrassed by that play. When Budda and DK were both in the NFL's top 100, that play got highlighted on both of them. So a positive for DK and a negative for Budda. But I mean, yeah, it is just a great play. So we got our predictions. That's the only prediction we're going to do for the day because we got a lot more to talk about. And gentlemen, it's time for some shout outs.
I didn't think about shout outs.
It's a new year. We shout out to 2022.
Right. Shout out to 2020 Part 2.
Shout out to all the postmen who have to deliver what? What are we saying?
Mail?
Mail workers?
The U.S. Postal
all
Service?
All the mail delivery people, MAIL, who have to work in days like today where it's snowing pretty hard here in Tokyo.
Yeah, I know Portland got some snow last week. Seattle got some snow this last week. It was definitely, for people that working from home, no big deal. But for anyone that had to commute, it was definitely a little bit rough. Want to shout out to Tony. Tony, I won his fantasy football league. I won a bunch of money, so I appreciate that. I'm in the positive for my fantasy dues for the year, which is always great. Shout out to Birdfinger. Check us out at hawkscast.net. We are the hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me as always is Zeb. Check us out at Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum, and we wish you all a go Russ.
You're not Hawks.